Brilliant, thank you. Can you see the screen all right? Can someone confirm that for me,
I
please?
can, yes.
Excellent. Great. So yeah, lovely to be here. So we are going to talk about how we have rank rated our assessments, which is slightly different, using a different traffic light approach as someone else in a different presentation mentioned earlier. As ours really looked at whether an assessments could be done well, even with very basic prompting of an AI. So what we did, we listed all the assessments in our undergraduate psychology program, where both Steph and I teach on, to determine really how AI resistant they were. And we really looked at this from a student point of view. So we thought, okay, a student gets an assessment brief, and let's say they want to use AI, or let's say they are short of time, whatever reason, and they just copy that essay question or that assessment question into, we use ChatGPT mainly, and see what happens. We just didn't do much prompting. We just really kept it as simple as possible. And then we used our traffic light to make the assessments green that were generally generative AI resistant, meaning whatever the AI gave was actually not that useful and you really had to do a lot of prompting, or it was about not being able to just use it in general because it was maybe a presentation that the student had to do. The assessments in Amber were partially generative AI resistant, so there were elements that a student would be able to use, but there was also a lot of stuff they still had to do themselves. So we thought for now, these were okay, because we really looked at the ones that were red, where we really saw that really help. This assessments need changing because the AI is almost doing 90 to 100% of the work that the student is supposed to do, the AI is doing. And of course, we want to avoid that. We want the students to learn from on the subject. So we're going to go through all these examples. So we have prepared 5 examples of how we have tweaked an assessment, sometimes completely changed it, depending on where we were in the academic cycle and where we're allowed to make different types of changes. So we're going to just go through all of these. There are examples for year 1 and year 2, so level 4 and level 5, and we're happy to take questions afterwards as well. So Steph, handing over to you for the first example.
And what we've done is really tried to embed elements of AI usage into assessments. So as others have mentioned earlier today, really looking to build up students' AI literacy and get them to engage meaningfully with AI, because we know they're going to use it. It's not a don't use or use kind of situation. So the first example is a level 4 assessment, and students used to just write a fairly straightforward reflection on their development of their skills. And what we added to this assessment was we asked them to get an AI tool. Initially, we told them just use ChatGPT. This year, we said use any tool you want, and they did actually use a variety of different tools. Ask for a paragraph about one of the skills that you have talked about, and then critique that output. And we asked them to use track changes and comments, because learning these digital skills are also part of what they're supposed to develop in this academic skills module. And what we found actually was that students were demonstrating really good levels of critical thinking skills that we don't often see in level 4 assessments. What they struggled more with was actually the track changes and the comments. But this also was a really good discriminator of students' abilities. So students who had done really well in the first part of the assessment tended to also do well in this part. Students that struggled with the first part, again, tended to struggle with this part.
All right, moving on to the second assessment. And I think one thing, by the way, before I move on, is that this year we also asked the students to give us the link to their AI. So if they use ChatGPT, right, you can click on share and copy a link. So we could then, follow the conversation they were having with the AI if we wanted to delve a bit deeper, particularly when they did really, really well or whether they performed poorly. So we could have a bit more insights into that. The next assessment is also a level 4 assessment, but here we're looking at AI for employability. So this is a module which focuses on employability for psychology, where we are teaching students on how to use AI tools for their CV, cover letter writing, mock interviews, because the assessment is an actual job interview. They're allowed to pick a job that we have provided to them that are real placement opportunities, actually, that the university is advertising. So they are tailored to their degree and where they are in their career journey. They pick one of the 7 usually that there are in different fields of psychology, and then they have to submit their CV and then a week later come to a room on campus and present themselves. And actually it's a real job interview with 2 members of staff who act as like the panel. So we have not particularly in this assessment made it explicit that you need to use AI or have said you should not use AI, but we have in a variety of teaching sessions discussed how they can get AI support as such to help them, better present themselves, give concise answers, because it's only a 10-minute interview, so the answers can be very long and winded. So how can they really prepare for that, and how can AI support them with that? So that's how we have used AI in employability. Steph, back to you.
Brilliant, thank you. So this now is a level 5 assessment. So actually, Pauli and I co-lead this particular module, and students are required to conduct a qualitative research project from inception to write up. So they have to develop an interview schedule. They then have to conduct interviews, transcribe those interviews, and then analyze the data. So we get them to do coding and to write up a thematic analysis. Now, this is something students haven't ever done before, and it's quite an involved assessment. So we've been helping them learn ways to get AI to support them. So one thing that we tended to find in previous years was that students really struggled creating their interview schedule. So they often found it hard to generate enough good questions that are going to get them a good data set. Now, they don't actually get assessed directly on how good their interview schedule is. We don't mark that per se, but if they don't create a good interview schedule, then their data is very limited and it's much harder to do a good analysis. So we helped them use ChatGPT or other AI tools to help them develop their questions. We've shown them how they can use AI for transcription. So how do you use an AI generated transcript, and then you have to go through and correct it. It doesn't do Kiwi accents, for example, very well. So if I was the interviewee, they would need to change quite a few words and build in some of the facial gestures and all of those sorts of things. And also, we suspect that students might be uploading their transcripts to get help with their analysis as well. They have to do their coding by hand. They have to submit that as part of the assessment. So we've seen that they've been doing the coding, but we think they might be using it for things like checking that some of the themes that they're pulling out are good ones or correct ones, if you like, seeing if they've missed anything in terms of coding and that sort of thing. We don't know 100%, but from conversations that we've had with students, they've mentioned that they have used sort of bits of support here and there like that. And then over to Pauli for the next one.
Yes, so this is again a year 2 module. It's a poster assessment. So sort of historically, the students were given the option to choose 1 of 4 or 5 articles, journal articles that were written by colleagues in our department, and they choose one and created a poster, submitted a poster, like if you would go to a conference, and present your poster, and then they would come again to a room where there would be a few other students as well as a member of staff, where they then have to present the poster and they get questions. And then they also see each other's poster and ask each other questions. It's like a sort of a presentation in front of a small audience. Now, this year we have embedded the element of AI into that. Last year already some students were using AI and some were not. So this year we made it explicitly part of the assessment. So they need to create at least part of the poster using AI. So they get dedicated teaching sessions on how that could look like, what they could do. So some may use it to, summarize, the method section of the paper. Some use it to create visuals. It's up to them. It doesn't really matter what they want to do. But on the poster, they also need to add a section on the reflection of their experience of using the AI. So that is really clear what worked for them, what didn't. And then they also need to come and present the poster in person. And then the final assessment.
And actually, this touches a little bit on some of the comments that were going on in the chat earlier about how AI isn't a search engine. So one of the things that we've done is so we also have teaching sessions for students on ethical use of AI. And funnily enough, our students are really big on the environmental impact. It is something that, after data privacy, is a big concern of theirs. But what we've done is we've talked about how students can use AI for research purposes, because we know one of the things, we have a lot of students that have caring responsibilities or are working part-time, that is actually more like full-time. And so they are using AI as much as they can as a time-saving device, as previous people have also mentioned. So we wanted to show them how they can effectively and appropriately use AI tools in research. So if they are asking for what are some good topics that I could use in my assessment, and if they're asking for links, are they checking to make sure those are real papers, those are the papers that actually are useful and relevant, going through and summarizing and making sure that they know the importance of still being able to understand the content so that they can decipher whether what AI is giving them is actually good content, is useful content, and is helpful and appropriate for them to use. And sort of linking to the first assessment example, we've really encouraged using AI tool to help them develop their critical thinking and critical analysis skills as well. I think that is our last example.
Yes, exactly. So thank you so much for listening, everyone. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much. I loved all the examples. That was really good. I've got one quick question, if that's okay. And then if you do have a question, maybe you'd raise your hand, but we've got about 2 minutes. Was there a particular assessment type that proved really popular with students? Because looking through the examples, for me, I think I would say that, oh, it must be the employability one because it's kind of what they can do with it in terms of getting into the workplace. But I'm not a student anymore, so I'm old. I don't really know what I'm talking about. So I was wondering if you've spoken to students about kind of their favorite type of assessment.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question, actually. And initially, we thought that the employability, the presentation one, was something they didn't like, because a lot of our psychology students are very anxious when it comes to giving oral presentations. But when they had done it, then in hindsight, so when we talked to them when they either finished their year one or now when they're in year two, they're like, actually, this was really useful. I really liked it. So it's often after they have done it, they realize the importance of it and the skills they have developed. So that was one. And actually also, Steph's, I think your assessment as well, the qualitative one where they're doing something more practical, they really like those.
Yeah, hands-on experience, I think it's so important. And it's the same with us, isn't it? That's how you learn how to use the tools, is by actually getting stuck in. So yeah, if you do have a quick question, if you'd like to raise your hand, I'll give you about 15 seconds. If not, we will need to move on, unfortunately, because I think we've reached time. Okay, in the interest of keeping to time, I'm going to move on if that's okay. But I think there are some questions in the Q&A. But I thought that was really interesting. Thank you. And it's great to see some examples of actual use cases as well. So that was really good. Thank you.
You're welcome.